with Golden State.
They're a different team with Jimmy Butler, and it's more than just, hey, we added toughness. No, it's a lot more than that. They have a belief now and a confidence, and more importantly, they have an element to their offense they didn't have before. Like, this is the best mid-range player they've had on their roster since Durant. You can give Jimmy Butler the ball and let him just go operate. He gets to the line. The Golden State Warriors are now a team that you've got to start watching more intently. They're not just fun because Curry's there. They're now a team that can do some things.
How about in the East? Talk to me about Cleveland.
Cleveland, to me, absolutely looking the Celtics dead in the eye. If you don't think that, I don't think you've watched them enough. I think the addition of DeAndre Hunter, the emergence of a guy like Ty Jerome as a guard that can really play impactful minutes in pressure situations, the emergence of Mobley as an offensive player. This team has no weaknesses. They shoot it. They've got great ISO players. They've got great bigs. They're a complete team.
Okay, and then you mentioned the Celtics, who also blew away the Knicks yesterday.
It's just a different level of focus that you've seen out of this team over the last few weeks. They come out very intent, very serious. It's business. They're not a team that's going to let you kind of play with them because they're going to allow that to happen. That's what they did some games in the regular season. You're seeing a team now that smells the springtime, and they're thinking about being a back-to-back champion.
I would like to smell the springtime.
I love that. That was great.
But that's a different conversation. They were having a good one yesterday on NBA Countdown, and our Big Perk had a big prediction about Boston.
And your 2025 NBA champions are the Boston Celtics.
You're calling it now.
Okay.
All right, well, let's just go home.
February 23rd.
OKC is not beating them. The Nuggets
Eastern.
are not beating them. The Cavs are not beating them. The Knicks damn sure are not beating them. And the Milwaukee Bucks are not beating the Boston Celtics. When they want to turn it up another level defensively, it's no team, not the Knicks and nobody else around the league, that's going to challenge them.
So, I mean, that's an interesting one. God bless Windy. He just sneaks in there with that, well, let's just go home. I used this analogy earlier. Like in golf, anyone might win on any given week because it's almost impossible for everyone to play their best all the time. If everyone plays their best, Scottie Scheffler's the best player. If everyone plays their best, let's just live in the East. Are the Celtics the best team?
Yeah, I think that's probably the fairest way to put it. If they do play their top game every night, yes, I think the Boston Celtics are the team. The thing is, teams don't do that, right? So now the question is...
But in the playoffs, generally, they do.
No, not every night.
Or closer.
The question for me is, are there teams now that have closed the gap with them over a year ago? And I think that's clear in Oklahoma City and Cleveland. So that's why, for me, it's... Look, he might end up being right, Perk, right? And we all might, if we had to pick right now, you force me, might all pick the Celtics, and we might be right. But to say and dismiss Cleveland and Oklahoma City, to me, I think just get ahead of yourself. Both of those teams do not have weaknesses.
Legs, this is too rational. We need takey.
Yeah,
we need
I know.
NBA today.
I
Get
know.
up. Celtics are champs now. But I think you're absolutely right. And I, obviously, with the Knicks this weekend, having a chance to see Cleveland up close and personal again, and then seeing Boston in turn on Sunday, Cleveland is right there. And I think that would be a really, really exciting series. You give Boston the edge based on their experience. And you guys, we were sitting post-game yesterday with my terrific radio partner, Tyler Murray, and kind of just debriefing. And there is something about the Celtics that's like reminiscent of what the Warriors were able to do in terms of guys entering their prime and really starting to play best basketball and the sustainability of them being able to win.
That's an interesting take. You were talking about the Warriors. So we're talking, and we just came off an NFL run where we were talking about dynasty, right? I don't know exactly what it takes to qualify as a dynasty in the NBA right at this moment. The Celtics certainly do, but they haven't had it since the 60s. Are we sitting here, meaning they haven't won back-to-back championships since the 60s? You're saying you think we could be entering an era of the Celtics?
I don't know if it will go more than two, because I think Cleveland is right there. I think OKC is right there, depending on what happens with Houston. I think we still can't sneeze on Denver. Like, I think the East is going to retool. Like, we're still chasing the Celtics. But in terms of those guys being, 26, 27, like, keeping the group together and having a chance to run it back, the continuity, that matters.
It's continuity. And one thing we're going to find out if playoffs go the way we think it's going to go, the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals are not going to face a team like the Pacers. You know, remember that last year? They played the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah. That wasn't really a true test. If they play the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, that'll be a bigger test because there's a team that's going to be built just like them to beat them.
Well, look, I mean, the reality of it is that people in Cleveland right now are throwing things at their television screen, and they're saying to Tim Legler, from the minute the ball was thrown up in October this year, from the very first jump ball we had in the NBA this year, the Cavaliers have been the best team in the East. Is that not Do we not feel that way? How is that?
Well, there's two different ways to look at it. The body of work to this point, yes, that's the best body of work. That's the cleanest sheet, right? That's what Cleveland has established. But now, we're not talking about that. We're talking about right now how the Boston Celtics look, and that's what we're comparing them to. His point is great, because here's what I have felt about the Boston Celtics. It's not taking anything away from what they did. They were the best team in the league last year. They didn't take the best punch this league has because of the injuries to some teams. Like they didn't have to face a Giannis. The Knicks were decimated. You get the Pacers in the conference finals, and even like Dallas surprised some people that they were the team you saw at the end in the West. Here's what I'm saying that. If Kristaps Porzingis goes down this year, like he did last year, now there are teams ready to gobble that up. And last year, there weren't teams that could overcome that. A team like Dallas in the finals when Porzingis misses 2.5 games. That will be different this year. So you need to stay healthy because teams have narrowed that gap with Boston.
And did we learn about the Celtics last year that them getting over the top and finally breaking through and winning this championship that had eluded them 2 years ago in the finals, and then the year after that, remember what Jimmy Butler in Miami did to them, embarrassed them in the conference finals. So did they get that necessary experience to now give them the confidence to win? Or in this playoffs, are we going to see that team that, as we've said, sometimes they just don't give you everything they've got? That's going to be the test to see if they do face some of the better teams in the playoffs.
I want to go back to Monica's Warriors analogy because there's a similarity in the way they move the ball. You had a great tape for us this morning. The Warriors were as good as anybody when they were at their best. The ball never touches the ground. The ball is constantly moving, and the Celtics seem to have a little bit of that.
100%. The ball moves with a snap, crackle, and pop for sure. And when we talk about those Warriors team, we forget how good those defenses were. Same thing with the Celtics. But let's stick with the offense here. Count the dribbles. 1. I think we're going to get 2 from Jaylen Brown here. 1, 2, bop, swing, right? And this was a good defensive possession by the Knicks, but they are so confident in what they do, and they find one another so quickly, right? Even the best defenses, you can't outrun the pace of the basketball usually. Here, Jaylen Brown, Derek White gets out of the way. You are spreading the floor again. They've got 4 guys around the perimeter, and they're allowing their dribble penetration to create a little bit. That is a well-contested shot. Derek White has had an all-star caliber year. Like, he's another weapon for these guys. Here, you draw 2. Jason Tatum in the middle of the floor. Luke Cornett, terrific screen here. OG Anunoby, no chance, can't get out there. Who's that? Jaylen Brown. It's another 3. And these were 3s from that ball game. They also did a great job of scoring in the paint and scoring in transition.
Derek White had 19, 9, and 7 in that game, and it's like you don't mention it until you're getting ready to you're rolling the credits. You're going off the air. Oh, by the way, Derek White had 19, 9, and 7 as your 3rd best player. That's a great tape. It's a great point, and I saw it sitting there like immediately when they came onto the floor. Just the look in their eye, their demeanor, and the way they carved the Knicks up in the first 6-8 minutes of that game. And they don't run anything complicated. Boston runs high ball screen, and they know that you can't ultimately keep the ball in front because of who we have, and everybody on the floor can shoot. How are you going to defend this screen, and how are you going to make these adjustments? And they just didn't think the Knicks were going to be able to do it, and ultimately they couldn't.
So now that the football season is over, we transition into basketball. I go from the guy that when I walk down the street, everyone yells Jets things at me, to the guy that people will yell, Greeny, can the Knicks do it? Greeny, can the Knicks do it? And if this weekend was any indication, the answer is definitively no. Can we put up A18, please? The Knicks are on pace to have their 2nd best season in the last quarter century. But boy, that first step is a doozy. They are 0-7 against the 3 best teams in the NBA this year. They still have 3 games left against the Cavs and Celtics. All of those come in April. I wouldn't consider that good news. This weekend in particular, they were down 27 at the half against Cleveland on Friday night, and they were down 21, I think, at the half yesterday. So what did we learn about the Knicks?
Well, the first thing I would say is to any Knicks fan, just treat that like it's a football graphic. You're down a touchdown. You're down a touchdown.
Yeah.
You're down 0-7.
It's 7 now.
Treat it like this. Against the other 26 teams, you're really good.
That's
That's the point. That's my point. The Knicks are on pace to have their 2nd best season in this millennium. But there still seems to be a real differentiation between them and the big boys.
At some point, you have to draw a line in the sand and prove to yourself that you can slow these teams down. I mean, that's the big part of this. Because here's the thing. The Knicks are, I think, the 6th-rated offensive team in the league. They're going to have a lot of nights where their offense is so good they're going to win a lot of games. These teams are equally as good offensively, but significantly better defensively. And that is where you see the real discrepancy, and that's why some of these margins, particularly the last 3 losses against, because they had some closer losses to these teams earlier. these last 3 have been pretty glaring that they just cannot stay connected.
So explain this to me, Monica and Alan. For those who don't know, you cover the Knicks team on a daily basis. Monica, you do the radio. Alan, you're there with the TV and everything else. The Tom Thibodeau is like the Vic Fangio of basketball, right? Like, I mean, he's just a defensive specialist. Why is this team struggling so much defensively?
That's a loaded question, Greeny. I think a little bit of it is personnel. You missed Mitchell Robinson as a guy that could defend the pick and roll, could kind of hold in that drop coverage, still protect the rim. I just think it hasn't quite come together consistently. And in particular, when you talk about the teams that they have not been able to beat, there's a level of depth there, too, that is beyond just your starting 5 being able to defend their starting 5. Like, their defense has to go deep into your roster as an identity. And then the other part of it is the Knicks have kind of lived and died by the three-point shooting, and those teams' ability to stop them on the line has been a problem.
They are small. That's one thing that they struggle with, certainly. But, again, for them defensively, they're 20th now in the league. That's a Tom Thibodeau coach team. That doesn't normally happen. They're not complete yet as a roster, I don't think. And this front office, alarm bells should be sounding off after this weekend.
Legs, if we're looking at the Eastern Conference right now, you got the Cavs and the Celtics. They're clearly the best. And however you want to look at it, we discussed it. Then you've got, I'm just looking at the standings, Knicks, Pacers, Bucks, Pistons, Orlando, etc. If I told you one of the other teams is going to make one of those 2 teams really sweat, or even beat one, upset one of them and get to the conference final, which team would you tell me it's going to be?
I'd probably pick the Pacers right now. Indiana, if people probably aren't paying attention to Indiana Pacers because they've really started off slowly. They're coming on now. But start watching the Pacers, and you're going to see they're an incredibly difficult team to guard. So I would probably pick Indiana out of the group as we sit here today.
Yeah, it's not going to be a whole lot of defense necessarily.
No, there wouldn't be.
But they can keep up. They're going to score.
That's the thing. They're going to match you.
We'll keep an eye. That's the top of the East. We'll get to the West.